She was interested. You felt it. You saw it. Something in the way she looked at you told you this was different. She laughed a little too long at something you said. She leaned in when she didn't have to. She replied fast. She remembered small things. And for a moment, you thought, this is it. So you did what most men do. You leaned in harder. You texted more. You complimented more. You made yourself more available. You showed her, in every way you knew how, that you were serious, that you cared, that she mattered to you. You thought that's what women wanted. Effort, consistency, emotional honesty. And then she pulled back. Not dramatically, not with anger, just slowly. The replies got shorter. The energy shifted, the warmth you felt started cooling down, and you couldn't figure out why. You were doing everything right. You were giving more than most men ever would. And somehow, that was the problem. Most men think effort creates attraction. It doesn't. Effort maintains connection, but attraction, real, deep, emotional attraction, is built on something else entirely. Something most men never learn because no one teaches them. Not their fathers, not their friends, not the movies they grew up watching where the guy chases the girl, makes some grand gesture, and wins her heart at the end. That's fiction. In reality, the men who chase the hardest usually end up the most confused. And the men who understand what I'm about to share with you end up being the ones women can't stop thinking about. This isn't about games. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about pretending you don't care. This is about understanding something fundamental about how emotional attraction works in women, and once you understand it, everything changes. The confusion disappears. The overthinking stops. And you start showing up in a way that draws women toward you instead of pushing them away. But I need you to stay with me here, because what I'm about to explain goes against almost everything you've been told about how to treat a woman. And if you leave too early, you'll walk away with the same confusion you came in with. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that the guys who seem to do the least are often the ones women are most drawn to? Not the cold ones, not the cruel ones, but the ones who seem settled in themselves. The ones who don't rush. The ones who speak less but say more. The ones who aren't performing for attention but simply exist with a kind of quiet weight to them. That's not an accident. That's not luck. That's not because they're better looking or wealthier or more interesting. It's because they understand something you don't. Yet, women are not attracted to effort. Women are attracted to emotional safety combined with emotional challenge. Those two things together, not one or the other, both. And the reason most men fail is because they only offer one. They either give too much safety, too available, too predictable, too eager, and the woman loses that spark of curiosity. Or they give too much challenge, too distant, too cold, too unavailable, and the woman eventually walks away because she doesn't feel secure enough to invest. The men who naturally attract women sit in the middle. They make a woman feel safe enough to open up, but uncertain enough to stay emotionally engaged. Not because they're playing a game, but because they have a life, a purpose, a center that doesn't revolve around her. And that's the part most men miss. You thought the answer was doing more, being more attentive, more present, more vocal about your feelings. And in doing that, you removed the one thing that kept her emotionally drawn to you. The mystery, the space, the part of you she hadn't figured out yet. When you gave her everything up front, there was nothing left for her to wonder about. Nothing left to discover, and attraction, for women, lives in that space of discovery. It lives in the question, not the answer. This is not about withholding love. This is not about being emotionally unavailable. This is about understanding that attraction breathes in the gap between closeness and space. And if you collapse that gap by always being there, always reaching out, always filling every silence with reassurance, you suffocate the very thing you're trying to build. So before I go deeper, I want you to sit with that for a moment. Think about the last time you felt someone pulling away, and ask yourself honestly, were you giving her room to miss you? Or were you so afraid of losing her that you held on tighter than she could breathe? That answer matters more than you think. Now that you understand the foundation, let me show you what actually happens inside a woman's mind when she starts becoming emotionally invested in a man. Because most men have no idea what to look for. They're looking for obvious signs, big gestures, direct confessions, clear verbal confirmation that she likes them. But that's not how women communicate attraction. Women communicate attraction through subtle shifts in behavior. Small, almost invisible changes that most men either miss entirely or misread as something else. And the reason they miss them is because they're too busy performing, too busy trying to impress, too focused on what they're doing instead of paying attention to what she's showing them. So let me walk you through what these shifts actually look like, and more importantly, why they happen. The first shift is mirroring. When a woman starts to feel emotionally safe with you, she begins to mirror your energy, your pace, your tone. If you speak slowly, she slows down. If you're calm, she becomes calm. If you lean back, she leans back. This isn't conscious. She's not deciding to do it. It's her nervous system syncing with yours because she feels settled around you. She feels like she can relax. And when a woman mirrors you, it means one thing. Your presence is regulating her emotions. That's deeper than attraction. That's trust forming in real time. The second shift is the guard dropping. Every woman carries a guard, a wall she keeps up to protect herself from men who want something from her before she's ready to give it. But when she starts feeling safe with a man who isn't rushing, who isn't pressuring, who isn't constantly pulling her toward a conclusion, that wall comes down slowly. She starts saying things she doesn't normally say. She shows sides of herself she usually hides. She becomes softer, not because you asked her to, but because you gave her room to. And most men ruin this moment. They see vulnerability and they rush toward it. They flood her with reassurance. They overvalidate. They make her openness about their own need to feel needed. And just like that, the wall goes back up because she didn't feel met, she felt consumed. The third shift is protection. This one most men never notice. When a woman is emotionally invested in you, she starts protecting your image. She speaks carefully about you around others. She doesn't let people disrespect you in conversation. She corrects people who misunderstand your intentions. Not because you asked her to. Not because she's performing loyalty, but because in her mind, you've become something worth guarding. This is one of the deepest signs of emotional investment a woman can show. And it happens quietly. You may never even see it. But it's there. And it means she's already started weaving you into her sense of identity. The fourth shift is presence over attention. Early on, a woman might enjoy your attention, your compliments, your texts, your effort, but as her emotional connection deepens, what she craves changes. She stops wanting attention and starts wanting presence. She doesn't need you to say something clever. She wants to sit beside you and feel your steadiness. She wants the silence between you to feel full instead of empty. And this is where most men lose the plot. They think more words, more gestures, more energy will keep her interested. But what she actually wants is for you to be still with her, to let the moment breathe, to not fill every gap with performance. Because presence, real presence, tells her something words never can. It tells her you're not afraid of stillness. And a man who isn't afraid of stillness is a man who is grounded in himself. The fifth shift is respect for your silence. When a woman starts to respect your silence, something has changed inside her. She no longer needs constant communication to feel secure with you. She doesn't panic when you don't reply immediately. She doesn't fill your space with demands or questions or pressure. She trusts that your silence doesn't mean absence. It means depth. This is rare, because most relationships today are built on constant contact, constant reassurance, constant verbal proof that someone cares. But a woman who respects your silence is a woman who sees you as something solid, something that doesn't need to be checked on to know it's still there. The sixth shift is emotional alignment. This is when she starts aligning her emotional world with yours. She begins caring about what you care about, not because she's lost herself, but because your inner world has become interesting to her. She asks deeper questions. She remembers details you forgot you shared. She connects dots in your life that even you haven't connected yet. This is a woman who is studying you, not to control you, but to understand you, because understanding you makes her feel closer to something she values. The seventh shift is nurturing. When a woman becomes emotionally invested, she starts taking care of you in small ways. She notices when you're tired. She brings you something without being asked. She adjusts her plans around your needs without making it obvious. This isn't submission. This isn't her shrinking herself. This is her choosing you, actively, quietly, consistently. And when you see this, the worst thing you can do is take it for granted. And the second worst thing you can do is overthank her to the point where it feels transactional. Just receive it. Acknowledge it with calm appreciation. Let her feel that her effort landed somewhere solid. These 7 shifts don't happen because you chased. They happen because you created the conditions for her to move towards you willingly, emotionally, without pressure, without performance. And that brings us to the part most men need to hear the most. If you've ever given everything to a woman and watched her walk away, this part is for you. Not because I'm going to tell you what you did wrong, but because I'm going to tell you something no one else will. You weren't weak for caring. You weren't stupid for trying. You weren't wrong for wanting to show a woman how much she meant to you. You were doing what you thought was right, what you were taught, what every movie, every song, every piece of advice from people who never understood attraction told you to do. Give more, try harder, show her you're different. And you did. You showed up when others didn't. You stayed when it got hard. You carried emotional weight that most men wouldn't even acknowledge, let alone hold. And none of that makes you less of a man. But here's what happened. You lost your frame, not your value, not your worth, your frame, the invisible structure that holds your identity in place when someone else's emotions are pulling at you, the thing that keeps you grounded when everything inside you wants to react, to chase, to fix, to beg for clarity. Frame is not about dominance, it's not about control, it's about knowing who you are and not abandoning that knowledge the moment a woman pulls away. It's about being affected by her without being dismantled by her, feeling the pain without letting it rewrite your identity. And most men lose it not because they're weak, but because they were never taught to hold it in the first place. Nobody told you that chasing a woman who's pulling away doesn't bring her closer, it pushes her further. Not because she doesn't care, but because the moment you start chasing, you shift the dynamic. You go from being the man she was drawn to the man she's managing, from the man who made her feel something to the man who needs something from her. And that shift kills attraction faster than anything else. Not because she's cruel, not because she's playing games, but because attraction requires polarity. It requires a gap, a tension, a space between wanting and having that keeps the emotional energy alive. When you collapse that space by chasing, by over-texting, by constantly seeking reassurance, you remove the very tension that made her feel something in the first place. So what's the alternative? Stillness. Not silence as a weapon, not distance as punishment, not withdrawal as a tactic. Stillness is a reflection of who you actually are. A man who feels the pull but doesn't act on impulse. A man who can sit with discomfort without needing to resolve it immediately. A man whose peace is not dependent on her response. That kind of stillness is magnetic, not because it's strategic, but because it's rare. Most men are reactive. Most men text when they're anxious, chase when they're scared, apologize when they've done nothing wrong just to make the tension go away. But the man who can feel all of that and still remain composed, that man communicates something powerful without saying a word. He communicates that his emotional world is stable, that he doesn't need external validation to feel okay, that his sense of self doesn't collapse the moment someone creates distance. And that's what women are drawn to. Not coldness, not indifference, groundedness. The feeling that no matter what happens, this man is going to be okay. That his love is a choice, not a dependency. That his presence is an offering, not an obligation. When you understand this, everything changes. You stop texting to check if she's still interested. You stop over-analyzing her replies. You stop performing affection to get affection back. You start living in your own center again. You start doing things because they matter to you, not because they might impress her. You start existing as the man you were before you made her the center of your world. And ironically, that's the version of you she was attracted to in the first place. Not the man who bent himself into shapes to fit her expectations. Not the man who abandoned his rhythm to match hers. The man who had his own life, his own energy, his own gravity. The man she had to come toward because he wasn't coming to her. That's not strategy. That's self-respect. And self-respect is the most attractive thing a man can carry, not because it impresses women, but because it tells the world, and her, that you know your value without needing someone else to confirm it. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't shrink. You stand where you are and let the right person walk towards you. Not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Out of knowing that anything built on desperation will crumble, and anything built on quiet confidence will last. That's the shift most men never make, and that's why most men stay stuck. Let me be honest with you for a moment. If you've watched this far, hoping I'd give you a trick to make her come back, you've missed the point. And that's okay, because the fact that you're here tells me something. It tells me you're not looking for a quick fix. You're looking for something real. Something that finally makes sense after months, maybe years, of emotional confusion. So here it is. The truth that most men spend years avoiding. She was never the goal. You were. Every relationship you've struggled in, every woman who pulled away, every moment you felt like you weren't enough. None of that was about her. It was about the version of you that showed up in those moments. The version that forgot who he was. The version that made her approval the foundation of his confidence. The version that needed her to stay so he could feel valuable. That version of you isn't broken. He's just unfinished. And the work isn't about learning how to attract women. The work is about becoming a man who doesn't need to learn how to attract women. A man so rooted in his own identity, so clear in his own values, so stable in his own emotional world that attraction becomes a byproduct of who he is, not something he has to manufacture. This is the identity reframe most men resist. Because it's easier to focus on her. It's easier to analyze her behavior, to decode her texts, to figure out what she meant when she said that thing 3 weeks ago. It's easier to make her the project instead of making yourself the project. But that focus keeps you stuck. It keeps you looking outward for answers that only exist inward, and it keeps you building your sense of self on ground that doesn't belong to you. The man who attracts without effort isn't performing confidence. He's living it. He wakes up and his day has structure. His mind has purpose. His body has discipline. His words have weight, because he doesn't waste them. He doesn't say things to fill silence. He doesn't compliment to earn validation. He doesn't show up hoping to be chosen. He shows up already whole, and when a woman enters his life, she feels that. She feels the difference between a man who wants her and a man who wants her but doesn't need her. That distinction is everything. It's the difference between pressure and invitation, between desperation and depth, between a man who's reaching for her and a man who's standing still, fully formed, letting her decide if she wants to step closer. You don't need more tactics. You need more alignment. Alignment between who you are and how you show up. Alignment between what you value and how you spend your time. Alignment between the man you want to be and the choices you make every single day. Because when you're aligned, you don't second-guess yourself. You don't rehearse what to say. You don't calculate when to text back. You just move with clarity, and clarity is the most powerful thing a man can carry into any room, any conversation, any relationship. Let me tell you what happens when you make this shift. You stop chasing women who don't see your value, not because you're bitter, but because your time becomes too important to spend on someone who needs convincing. You start choosing more carefully, not out of arrogance, but out of self-awareness. You recognize that your energy is limited and your peace is sacred, and you refuse to hand either one to someone who treats them like they're disposable. You start attracting differently. The women who show up in your life begin to match your energy. They're calmer, more secure, more emotionally mature, because like attracts like. And when you stop operating from anxiety, you stop attracting people who feed on it. And the most important change of all, you stop measuring your worth by someone else's interest in you. You stop refreshing your phone, you stop reading into silences, you stop asking yourself what you did wrong every time someone doesn't respond the way you expected. You just live, fully, presently, without apology. That's not cold. That's not detached. That's freedom. The kind of freedom that comes from knowing who you are without needing anyone else to validate it. So let me leave you with this. The next time you feel the urge to chase, to over-explain, to prove yourself to someone who's already stepping away, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself one question. Are you still trying to win her? Or are you finally ready to choose yourself? Sit with that tonight. Let it settle. And when you're ready, start building the version of you that doesn't need this video anymore. That's the man she'll never forget. If something in this video made you pause, even for a moment, that's not an accident. That's awareness starting to settle in. Subscribe if you're done chasing and ready to start building. Hit like if one sentence changed how you see yourself. And leave a comment telling me what shifted for you tonight. This channel is for men who choose themselves quietly and never look back. I'll see you in the next one. Stay grounded.